Good evening. My name is Sean Cohen. I'm representing El Energita, which is a Spanish language newspaper which is here in town. And I'm addressing an item on the agenda regarding the newspaper draft and the proposed ordinance on that. And the intent of the ordinance, as I read the intent of the ordinance, is not to chapter to discriminate against, regulate, or interfere with the publication, circulation, distribution, or dissemination of any printed material. But when I go, we are supportive of the general ordinance of an ordinance on this matter. When I go into the details, we have some issues with the details that would be prohibitively, material financial hardship on our business, which is the only local, owned and operated newspaper in the community. And the issues we have are the height of the news, saying the height can't be more than 4 feet, 2 inches. We just spent $1,000 on boxes that are over 4 feet, 6, I believe. They wouldn't be in compliance with the code, and that would be a material financial hardship to us, and in fact would not be within the intent of what the ordinance is. And then the second point is sheets that are made of metal. People go around town, the only organization that has metal tracks right now are the Union Times. None of the other advocates or paper or some of the real estate magazines that have boxes. They're all plastic. And we've actually found, we do have some metal ones ourselves. We've actually found plastics are maintained better, easier to maintain. The rust that happens to the metal ones, they get the salt and sand from the road, they get corroded. The salt and sand become rusted out, and they don't maintain as well. And then another point I would like to make is talks about the lettering on the rack. We have our logos. We already spent $1,000 on the logos, which are red and blue, and not black and white, as it says here in the ordinance. But the point is, there's a lot of details in it that would materially affect the local business, and would not be with the intent of. As it says, the intent here is not to discriminate or interfere with the publication, circulation, distribution of information. Unfortunately, the way the detail is written, that's exactly what it would do, as we would be able to distribute. We have to take down boxes, be a material financial impact of our business. We wouldn't be able to get new boxes that would comply with the ordinance. It's not our business plan. We have material impact. I don't think, we're supportive of an ordinance that would try to set regulations to it. I think it needs to go back to the drawing board. Detail that would be, we would love to be consulted on this, that we are the only locally owned and operated newspaper in the area, so we would welcome the chance to be consulted with it and more details about the legislation.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate your comments. Any other member of the public wish to address the council? Yes? We have 2 questions. Chris will tell a person the song person. Paul.
My name is Chris Hotel, 42 Pleasant Street, Danbury. This is full disclosure, I'm the mother of Paul. Also, in this full disclosure, Paul and I discussed that some lengthy ordinance have a break. I do have problems with the ordinance of parades. I grew up in Danbury, and I grew up watching many parades from the Danbury High School. After Danbury High School football games, where people went up and down Main Street, honking their horns, including and I think drinking beer and drinking all kinds of heck. And nobody thought much about anything of it, because they seemed to be like our kind of people. And the same thing happens with weddings. Lots of people after weddings, I didn't participate in this, but many people after their weddings would tie shoes and cans and all this sort of things on their cars and go up and down Main Street. I haven't seen this in years, but it was very, very common, very popular, and boy, did it disrupt traffic. Everybody stopped, stood by, and smiled like we all did at the time. It's different now because I think it's different in degree and different in time. And time because they serve new people. You have to remember that everybody in this room was a new person at one point. My family had to come here in the 60s and 20s, but we sure knew the living. My husband's family came around 1900, and they were moved to my family. The people that are here that we're speaking about with the World Cup parade were new to all of us. That was in times where the parade was. There was a big, louder, noisier, longer lasting, etc. kind of a parade. I thought what you, Mayor Bowden, said about the volleyball team was a terrific way to solve the problem. You didn't just slap ordinances on, you found a way to put volleyball all over the town in a way that they could enjoy it and just people's ears wouldn't blast it out over the weekend. There's no question there's a problem. And I think the way to do it is to not have a divisive or divisive, or is that adding more divisiveness to our population than we already have. There's other big problem to me, and that's the problem of Constitution. The right of free assembly is just as important as the right of free speech. And boy, I think this ordinance could be a magnet for the ACLU. If we got some people who got wind of this, who are litigious in nature, this town could be having a real problem with legal fees. I'm just afraid of that. I'm not a lawyer, but I have a lot of friends and relatives where I think, oh boy, if they could have some fun with it. So I would really suggest that you might want to try a much more scaled down in size, much more focused to what would really work. And stay away from the right of assembly. I don't also like the fees. I mean, the fees can be very restrictive against the very people that this may be aimed at. And people who have plenty of money and maybe look more like the rest of us, how does it really be? This don't have to be against them anyway. So I really do ask you to think about this very carefully. Thank you.
Ms. Allen.
Council, I couldn't begin to match the eloquence of Hello, so I will just add my voice to hers and urge you to please vote down this parade ordinance. I believe, in fact, it doesn't even do what it was intended to do, which was to encourage impromptu celebrations, and that beyond that, there's just too many constitutional problems with it. And as a very wise attorney I know says, even if you're right, you don't want to be sued in a very bad way. The other item I'd like to speak on is the Westwood Village water issue. From the materials that accompany the schedule, it's not clear how much the residents are paying for their water, but it's clear that they are paying too much, and that so I'm glad that it's finally coming before the council and that can be done about that. It does seem clear from the materials that the reason they're paying too much is because of the whole waterway structure, which incorrectly treats some of the businesses who are the ones who business rather than hundreds of residential units, so that they're used to look at the whole structure. I was dismayed by the fact that the initial letter to you, Mayor Mountain, was over a year ago that the residents were trying to get some relief on this. It seems, in general, the council should be doing a better job of getting the ad hoc committees together and getting the reports back to the council.
Let me just say the council did make an adjustment per that letter on the water rate structure, but Westwood Village came back and said it wasn't enough. So we're back to the drawing board. Further residents, you're all the way in the back, and then Leo, I'll get you next. Just your name and address to the right.
My name is Ken Ducker. I am 89 Davian Road. Yes, I am a taxpayer and lived for quite some time. I want to speak on ordinance 18, please. I feel that, yes, something doesn't come, but I feel that this is not the way to do it. I do feel it is a grave restriction of the rights of freedom of gather and petition our government. I feel in this time in our history right now that it just seems like government keeps putting more and more and more restrictions on our rights as citizens, and this just seems like another step. I don't feel that this ordinance covers impromptu gatherings at all. It says that in the paperwork, but if you read it says as a result of prior planning. A prior planning does not mean an impromptu parade. That means getting something organized and working out. Now, I've tried to organize things in the city, and I can tell you that you do have things on the board that you do have to jump through hoops. I tried to do a rally last summer for the rally, and I cannot begin to tell you the hoops. I probably gave up. I just said, forget it, it's not worth all the hassle between the permitting and the paperwork and the insurance and everything else. So you do have all this already covered, and there's no reason to pass another law restricting freedom of speech, freedom of gathering in the city. As far as impromptu driving down the streets, my first wedding, my whole procession was classic Cougars. There was 14 of them blasting down Main Street, Danbury, horns honking. The cops were stopping traffic, thumbs up, everybody was waving, everybody was happy. I can't see how we can stop that from happening. That's an impromptu thing because I happen to not put a flag on the hood of my car and beat my horn and drive around town. Doesn't make me any different than somebody driving a large, loud automobile on the way home from the wedding. We seem to have a double standard here. This is not the answer. This is restricting our rights. This is stopping us from gathering. And if we have something that happens in town that a bunch of us want to get together and go down to town hall, does this ordinance mean that, there's more than 25 of you here, you're now all in trouble? You know, there's ways around this, and I think this is a really bad idea, and I urge you to go to town. Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Bill Kundra, and I live on Vineyard Avenue in Danbury. I got stuck on one of those impromptu traffic jams, and there were a lot of cars getting stopped by policemen. I assume it was for safety reasons because a lot of the Jeep-type vehicles have many were very overloaded with people hanging out. And besides that, the whole city traffic was disrupted. Also, I remember 1900, there was not nearly as much traffic on the road then as there is now.
You remember 1900?
I put it right out there.
I think whatever have it organized increases the safety problems that I saw many cars being pulled over by policemen, and they were just safety issues. And another thing is there's tons more traffic out in the west back these people are talking. I would also make the fine much higher.
Okay. Any other member of the public wish to address the council this evening? Yes, sir. Patricia, I'll get you next.
My name is Dick Roush, and I live at 7 Bridge Road. I have addressed, by way of letter, the parade ordinance, proposed parade ordinance to the mayor and to the Corporation Council. I represent an education organization at Western Connecticut State University. It's called Phi Delta Kappa. It's a small organization locally, but worldwide it's a quite large organization, about 60,000 members. And 3 years ago, this organization decided that it needed to promote education on a local level, universal opportunity for education, public education. And so it developed a program whereby there would be a walk for education in the various localities, actually worldwide, over 60 60 countries. Locally, the Western Connecticut State University chapter of Phi Delta Kappa is a relatively small organization. We have approximately 125 members. The Education and Educational Psychology Department is fully of Western Connecticut State University, are all members of the organization. And many superintendents of schools, principals, and teachers are members. And we have planned, this organization has planned for an annual walk for education. And we have, the last 3 years, had such a walk. You probably haven't noticed it because there were very few people. However, it is growing. And what we're concerned about, basically, is not the parade ordinance, but where it affects our pocketbook. We raise money in the annual Walk for Education, in addition to the public relations point of view. And as we think about the parade, if you will, or the walk, we realize that there are a lot of groups that raise money for their organizations and raise the awareness of their programs. For example, the crop walk, which just was completed and so on. Now, we do not oppose the idea that we need to talk with city authorities, the police department, have fill out forms or whatever it is. But we are concerned, since we raise very little money, which go for scholarships for prospective educators, that, and although you may think that $100 fee, as proposed, is a very little amount of money, it would mean $100 less for us, for a small organization, as I mentioned. We're not there to raise money, but we're there to raise a level of understanding of the public for public education, and also to raise money for scholarships for prospective educators, and also for the doctoral program at Western Connecticut State University for research, because those are our tenets. We believe in research, leadership, and service to our community. So we do not oppose the idea that we need to register our walk, but we do oppose the idea of a fee imposed upon us, and we hope that it would be waived or whatever you might consider. Thank you for your time, and appreciate your consideration.
Good evening. Tricia Bowen, Map 36, Valerie Lane. I'm here to speak to you this evening against the parade public assembly ordinance. I do not know the particulars of any other ordinances that may be on the books that govern the other parades that we do engage in and represent and watch during the course of our years. I only know the language of the ordinance that is before you this evening. I read it several times, and I will tell you that there are many instances that I could give you, but I'm not going to bore you with all the specifics that I think people, in a public expression of spontaneity, or whatever their event would be breaking this particular law. I consider myself fairly well up on the issues and problems that are being present in the city of Danbury. And prior to the World Cup soccer events, it did not appear that such an ordinance or problem was evident in our community that would have resulted in this type of a response. It is my perception that this ordinance is a response to the events of that particular time period and what occurred down on Main Street. I must share with you personally that I was fortunate in working in an office on Main Street, the corner library place at that time. And when I realized what was happening during that week, not only did I witness joy, life, spirit, exuberance, pride of ethnic background, and pride of the place where these people currently live being displayed on the street of Main Street, which was a joyful, wonderful thing to see. But I also witnessed the marvelous professional behavior of the police department when they were assigned to go down on Main Street and to interact with the people as the week went on. They did their job professionally. They could hold their head up high with the police department in New York City because they did a wonderful job, all the while engaging in a human relationship with the people who were celebrating on Main Street. It was a wonderful thing to behold. I would hate to have spontaneous events that are part of our human condition be restricted by laws. Pretty soon, we are going to have an event that occurs every year. I have 7 children. They're adults now. The oldest is in the late 40s. They all graduated from Danbury High School. And let me tell you, I helped them decorate their cars so that they could spontaneously drive down Main Street, celebrating the end of their 12 years of education in the city of Danbury. And let me tell you, that's coming soon, and all you need is 6 cars filled with seniors celebrating, and you are breaking the restrictions of that particular law. And I suspect Henry Abitek and Immaculate probably do it to a lesser degree. I would hate to have that spontaneous expression of joy and exuberance and pride have to be curtailed because they can't pay that money, the permit, they can't have the time or don't have the time to do all the restrictions that are in there to get a permit. Let us celebrate the exuberance and spirit and life of joyous things in our community instead of imposing restrictions and laws on them. What I would suggest to the city and to the council members that instead of voting on this particular ordinance, put it on hold for a while. Think about it. We have a city that addresses the issues for the citizens. They have department officials, they have community people that plan a procedure to respond to disasters. I would suggest that a similar committee be called into existence to have similar procedures put into place by those very same departments and entities in our community to respond to the joyous expression of human life.
That will conclude the public speaking of our meeting this evening.